very much. And actually, there is, it's interesting, there's a lot of common ground, I guess, between our presentations, but other presentations. And I just wanted to talk actually a little bit about how at Linklaters we are looking to build on some of the local work we're doing around project management on matters, process redesign, where we're bringing together process consultants with lawyers on particular areas, and thinking how we best scale up that effort. Because I think, as Danielle was saying, in an industry that has enjoyed being inefficient for 10, 20, 30 years, actually this is quite a difficult task. And so we've been given quite a lot of thought to actually, how do we create a platform for these local initiatives to take hold and grow. And I just call this sort of go up the efficiency trajectory. I may have some interesting observations on this given the roles I've done within the firm. So up until last summer, I was the head of strategy at the firm. So most of the time I was sort of coming up with big initiatives and grand names for things that we thought the firm should do. Now I look after the business management function, which is much more embedded within the practice. It's much more about the implementation of strategy. So I now see how difficult it is actually in the practice to embed some of these grand themes. I think the first thing, and this will be nothing new really for you here, but is the continued reinforcement across the partnership. We're sort of 450, 500 partners, of the fact that more for less is here to stay. I'm pretty sure every firm in the room is on the receiving end of panel pitches, facing procurement intermediaries, RFPs which talk about the need for alternative resourcing or innovation around how certain components of a matter are delivered. This theme is just not going to go away. And really I think this sort of supply-demand inversion that has occurred since the global financial crisis is one that actually really is grist to the mill in terms of efficiency. And for us, everything we are hearing from clients, we are seeking to amplify across the firm, where you have particular parts of the firm that are more resistant to change. I'm sure you talked earlier on about the developments in-house legal teams, which in many of the larger banks in particular are law firms in themselves. And as they have become more sophisticated at how they look at their operations, that message is being amplified out to external law firms. And so we're on the receiving end of that. I personally believe that efficiency may be a bit of a differentiator today on certain areas of work. Actually, if we're able to come to the table with something that's more innovative, that gives us an advantage. But as I go on to speak later, I think this is going to be a leveler. Soon it's going to be a leveler. This is something that firms are not going to be able to opt out of. And so more for less is really here to stay. And I was just interested in Googling more for less, because it is a phrase that is used all over the place. And it came up with this NHS hospital report, which is actually quite interesting because in terms of a parallel, I often think that the medical profession or universities are actually quite similar to law firms in the sense that you've got professionals that don't really like being managed very much. But actually, just quoting from this, I mean, the three determinants of hospital efficiency, and here I think you could interchange hospital for law firm: external environment, factors such as the financial pressure on hospitals, competition and market forces. Secondly, hospital management, leadership, the use of effective management practices, cooperation between managers and clinicians. So I think that's a challenge for the legal profession, and operational processes. And these are the things that in this very lengthy report, which I don't recommend you read the entirety of it, but it is quite interesting in terms of this is not a new phenomenon. There are so many industries and sectors that have had to go through this transition. The other thing that was interesting to me when I read this was a firm belief among NHS executives that embedding an ongoing pursuit of efficiency relies in the delegation of responsibility. And that is, I think, is a core message that we have picked up on, and I'll expand on this, is that actually this is not something that can be dropped on an organisation. The sort of grand programme of change is destined to fail, and the best way to embed some of this thinking is through lighting fires at a local level and building from there. And the other thing, just to draw out, is which is similar. Studies have shown that attempts to re-engineer whole organisations, hospitals, have met with limited success, but there have been departments or areas of practice where process re-engineering has actually worked effectively. So just thought it was an interesting parallel, and there's all this Royal Mail, Amazon pressure, and other forces coming into the mail world, which is making life very difficult for the Royal Mail, and hence they are having to think about efficiency as they're on the receiving end of greater price pressure. So why do I talk about all this? Well, this is really about how is it that we can create the climate for change, and what is it that we are doing to do that. And the first I've said is amplify the external messages. We are putting a lot more focus on client relationship reviews within Linklaters, greater dialogue with clients, and really using that gold dust back in the firm to encourage change in areas where we believe clients will see the benefit. The second point, really, lighting fires versus grand initiatives. I talk to a lot of partners who say, the best way to embed change in this area is to find areas of the firm where there's a convergence between an external pressure. Maybe it's a transaction area where the pricing is particularly under pressure, and also there's an appetite to do something. Where you've got a willing partner who really gets this area, and you've got an external pressure, and those two things are in alignment, that is where you light a fire and you point the limited resources in the business improvement team. There are many areas of the firm, many transaction areas where we believe we would love to get into that area, because there's bound to be some commoditizable chunks of it somewhere in there, even though it may be dressed up as the most sophisticated transaction area. But ultimately, we are pointing our resources where we see this convergence between appetite and external pressure. And the last thing here is reinforcing tangible successes. So we find, as I'm sure you do in your firms, that nothing works better than a partner talking very compellingly about his or her experience in a particular area. And then, the room begins to light up. People jump on that example. So where we are having meetings of partners, we are trying to showcase examples. We're using project managers in a particular transaction area at the moment in the UK. Very big matter. We're talking about that. And actually partners who begin to say, well, I've never thought about using a project manager, are getting quite excited about it. So none of this is particularly complex, but it does need some orchestration behind the scene. I just thought this was quite an interesting parallel, actually. And the challenge with all these management theories is you sort of try to retrofit them to what you're doing and say that you're doing them as a result of the management theory. But Cotter has released the nine forces, case for change, urgency, and all that. He's implemented, written a new book called Accelerate. And I do think, actually, this is very interesting in terms of creating the right organisational model for efficiency. His basic premise is that traditional hierarchies, management hierarchies, were built and they evolved to meet the day-to-day needs of an organisation. So you've got deep functions and silos. They were excellent at running the status quo. All organisations start with something more entrepreneurial, but in time, he says, they become quite hierarchical. Those structures, he argues, are just not suited for the challenge of change. And what he says is needed is, alongside this more traditional management hierarchy, a very fluid, organic network of change, which is culturally a little bit anarchic, It embraces and involves people that are actually quite enthused by the particular change in hand. But it's not a traditional hierarchy. And he argues that the way to accelerate change, and I think efficiency in law firms is a good example of one of these changes, is to find a way to reinforce and run these two systems alongside each other. And in a sense, that's what we are trying to do with our efficiency program, in the sense that we have an established management structure and management hierarchy. But ultimately, to make real progress and to spread the work that we're doing across the firm, we need a network running alongside it. And that network has started with an intervention. So we have a business improvement team within the UK. That originally sat within the central strategy team, Linklaters. It now sits within business management because we felt that in order for that team to have more impact, it needed to be located in the practice, and partners needed to feel it was part of the practice rather than something sitting centrally, which was part of the central executive. So I think getting that right is really important. So it is an intervention, but it also needs to interconnect. I think Danielle was speaking about all the different touch points on efficiency with functions, knowledge, training, recruitment, all these different areas. So this capability needs both to intervene, but also to interconnect with all of the established functions. And it needs to scale through other roles. So in my business management team, we have in each of the global practices a business manager. And those business managers are both about managing day-to-day and supporting the practice, but they're also about encouraging change and working with the business improvement team to identify clients or product areas where we can do process work or project management work. We need sponsorship both locally and globally, and back to this network idea. And actually, the network we've got running sort of identifies its own partners or associates, and it's largely because these are people that get quite excited by this. Sometimes they're sitting in areas of the firm that are by nature quite process-oriented. There's a lot of derivatives and structured products. A lot of that area of the firm is by nature much more process-driven than others. But essentially, the group sort of finds its own individuals. So it is both the senior management identifying partners as leaders and visible proponents of this program of change, but also the change team and business improvement team latching on to individuals that actually are quite enthused by the whole exercise. And also working together effectively with functions to exploit the overlap. And I think the final point, and it's just reinforcing what I said, is that this needs to be owned by the legal practice and not seen as a function doing things to the legal practice. And culturally, that's quite a delicate thing. So just some final thoughts, and I think then we'll have some questions. As I said, I think this is maybe a differentiator now, but ultimately this is a leveler. And certainly from our experience, it's very easy to underestimate the change management challenge. For every success that we've got, there are hundreds more areas where we could get involved. But unless we build this sort of network, we're not going to go up this trajectory. We're not going to exploit the building blocks. And whether you subscribe to some of this management theory or not, I do think this accelerates the idea of having a dual model with the hierarchy and the change network is actually a really powerful one in law firms that don't really get out of bed and get excited about this sort of thing. I think it needs to start with an intervention, but I think that's very much about sort of lighting the tinder. And other roles have to pick that up and help scale it through the firm. The other thought is around the premium and commodity. I've just put, I thought I'd taken this off the final slides, but I put Steinway. I'm actually a pianist, And Steinway, as many of you may know, is probably the best piano in the world. And at highest quality, has always had this incredible brand reputation. But even that instrument has got some commodity sections to it. And I was just looking for a parallel when I was putting this together. So all legal transactions, however much the partners may feel they are unique and sophisticated and cannot be disaggregated, there are bound to be commodity components to them, and it's finding a way to have that dialogue and unlock further parts of the business where we can get involved. The final point is impact on longer-term business model. We've had lots of discussions around, well, what does this mean? What does alternative resourcing mean for our business model? Does that mean we will be recruiting less trainees? Does that mean the career path is going to change? My own view is that you can get so hung up on trying to rationalize all this that you don't experiment. And ultimately, we need to start somewhere and not think too hard about, next year, what will this mean for business model? We need to have that in mind, but we need to start on the journey with this.